Norwich City Council Licensing Subcommittee, Monday 12th of July 2021. We have one major item on the agenda today, application for grant of a premises licence at the Lord's Restaurant, 82 St Giles Street. I'll start with any apologies, please.
You just had Councillor Giles.
We had, apologies from Councillor Giles and Councillor Youssef, his replacement. Thank you. And declarations of interest. Okay, so item number 3 is the application for grant of premises licence for the restaurant. I'll hand over to Maxine Fuller, who is our licensing officer, who will present the report. And after that, I'll formally introduce us and we'll talk to the applicants. Thank you.
Members are asked, in accordance with the delegation of licensing functions contained in the Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy, the Licensing Act 2003, to consider the application for the grant of a premises licence in respect of Lord's Restaurant, 82 Upper St Giles Street, Norwich, NR2 1LT, following the receipt of relevant representations. It's recommended that members determine the application to grant the premises licence in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy. The applicant is Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited. The proposed DPS is Karajan X Balari. The application seeks to allow the licensable activities, times and opening hours as set out in the application form, which is attached to Appendix A. This also includes the steps proposed to promote the licensing objectives, which is the operating schedule. Attached to Appendix B and Appendix F were a confirmation of revised hours that were being applied for. However, there has been another further proposal for the licensing hours, which was submitted on the 30th of June by JMC Licensing, and this has been circulated to all parties. The premises did have a premises licence. However, a review application was submitted by Richard Diary, Public Protection Officer for Norwich City Council. A review hearing was arranged for the 13th of January 2021, and the committee revoked the licence. Relevant representations, we did receive representations from the police and the public protection, and copies of these are Appendix C. However, the public protection have withdrawn their representation, but this is on the submission of the proposed change of hours, which was submitted by email on the 30th of June 2021. Representations objecting to the application have been received from 20 local residents, including one councillor, and copies of these are attached to Appendix D. I can confirm that 4 of the objectors have withdrawn their representation due to the proposed changes in hours. Attached to Appendix E is a location map. Attached to Appendix G are the elements of the City Council's local licensing policy, which are considered to have a bearing upon the application. Attached to Appendix H are the elements of the national guidance issued by the Secretary of State that are considered to have a bearing upon the application. In summary, in determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, the subcommittee must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, that's to say the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. The representations, including supporting information presented by all the parties, the guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, national guidance, and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. The subcommittee must take such of the following steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Grant the application as passed, modify the conditions of the licence by altering or omitting or adding to them, reject the whole or part of the application, refuse to accept the proposed DPS. The The subcommittee is asked to note that it may not modify the conditions or reject the whole or part of the application merely because it considers it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. The representations received appear to relate to issues that fall under the licensing objectives. The subcommittee is directed to paragraphs 20 and 24 of the local licensing policy at Appendix D, which contain example of factors that impact on the licensing objectives and that the applicant could consider when addressing these issues. These paragraphs also contains examples of controlled measures that may be taken into account in operating schedules, having regard to the type of premises and or the licensable activities. The subcommittee is also reminded of the contents of appendices 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the local licensing policy not reproduced in this report, which contain reports of model conditions relating to 4 licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. Okay, at the beginning of the meeting, I should have introduced myself. My name's Ian Stutley. We have 2 other councillors, Nanette Joseph and Marion Maxwell, on the panel today. We have Sarah Moss, who is supporting us with legal advice from NP Law, and Leonie Met, who is looking after the tech and one of our committee officers. Okay, we introduce other members of the panel here today as we go through. So I'll turn to you, Mr. Zafalari, or your agent, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then talk about the business, proposed business, and the license that you're.
What was it you today?
Yes, if you just press the green button in the middle.
Okay, you got me? Yeah. Right, good afternoon. My name is Nick Sampo, and I'm the agent acting for the applicant in this case, which is Mediterranean Fine Foods Limited, Fine Dining Limited, which is applying for a new premises license. Sitting beside me is Claude-Jan Zafalari, who is the sole director of the company and the only person having significant control of the company, holding 100% of the shares. He is also the proposed designated premises supervisor, who holds a personal license issued by this licensing authority. The first thing to recognise is that this premises, when it's called 3 Diamonds, had its premises licence revoked, solely for breaching the COVID regulations. There was no suggestion in those review proceedings that the premises were not being operated in accordance with the then premises licence. That premises licence was held by a company called Durris Food Limited, in which Claude-Jan Zafalari, him, had no interest whatsoever. Neither was Claude-Jan the DPS under that previous premises licence. Durris Foods Limited was and is the province of Claude-Jan's brother, Allgood, whose interest in that company mirrors Claude-Jan's interest in the applicant company before you today. There is no connection, there is no other connection relevant to the application. The police have submitted a representation voicing concern about the proximity between Allgood, the previous operator, and this current application. So, to be clear from the outset, Allgood Zafalari, as I have demonstrated just now, no longer has any connection with the business at 82A opposite Charles Street, or in the company Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited, other than being his brother and an occasional visitor. This is easily evidenced by an examination of the public records at Company's House, which I have served in, both for Mediterranean Fine Dining and for Durris Food. Moreover, Allgood is not an employee of Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited. In fact, Allgood is now, as of the last visit of the police on the joint visit to 19th of May, as of the 1st of February, I should say, the proprietor of Kessingland Car Wash Kessingland Car Wash in Lowestoft, trading from 82 High Street, Lowestoft, and I put in the lease showing that Allgood has a different business that will be in your one too. So very effectively, the previous operator, Allgood, is out of the business, and in licensing terms, has left the building, quite literally. Now, the police make much of the fact that the lease to this building is still in Aldrich's name. However, for the purposes of the Licensing Act, an applicant for a premises licence only has to carry out or intend to carry out a licensable activity from a premises. That is Clodagh statutory entitlement to be here today making this application. It comes from section 16(1)(a) of the Licensing Act 2003, which talks about eligibility. He is in fact a person, to include a corporate person, who carries on or proposes to carry on a business which involves the use of a premises for the licensable activities to which the application relates. Your legal advisor will confirm that proprietary interests in premises are not referred to anywhere in the Act and therefore are wholly irrelevant to the licensing legislation. You will also note that the police themselves have served upon you an email written by Mr. Darren McRee, the letting agent, who clearly states in line 3 of his email, and I quote, he, Aldgate, would retain the lease of the property under his name and be responsible for paying the rent, etc., whilst his brother, Clodagh, would handle the day-to-day business, i.e. the licensing requirements. In my submission, this critical statement within the police case itself clearly evidences that Clodagh is the party taking on the licensing requirements. This is a licensing hearing. But I must reiterate the point. If in any event the issue of whose name is on the lease remains a concern to the police, then with the greatest respect, it is not even relevant to what is before you today. But the police simply wish to make much of a post which advertises a job at the business on Aldgate's Facebook page. We believe that it is it's wholly reasonable that Aldgate should advertise a job vacancy at the premises on his Facebook site. We, the licensing guys, that's my company, often share similar posts to premises that we represent or are pleased to promote or be associated with. There is one such advert posted on our site on the 30th of June of this year for a premises we recently obtained a premises license for in Shrewsbury, for example, and that advertises 4 different types of jobs. It cannot be that you are being asked to refuse the grant of a premises license because one brother advertised a job vacancy in his brother's business on Facebook. Surely. Now, the police have served on us the food registration document dated the 3rd of May, saying that Aldgate and Durrus Food were the food business operator. However, we've counter-served on you, it's in your papers there, the later food registration document dated the 6th of July, showing that Clodagh and the Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited are now registered there. Now, even if that document had not been updated, we ask, how could such an oversight ever run to the heart of any of the licensing objectives? Further, in my submission, there is nothing else in that police representation that actually goes to a licensing objective. And therefore, with respect, it is of no relevance before you today. Therefore, what lies before you is an entirely new application, made by a new applicant company with a new DPS. What went on before is not relevant to this application. This application must be judged on its own merits. Your legal advisor will no doubt advise you that therefore you must simply ask yourselves, in our submission, does this operating schedule promote the licensing objectives? And our answer to that question is simple. Yes, it does, amply. Now remember, there is no attack on the conditions offered or upon Clodagh's suitability to be the DPS contained within any of the papers before you. The application as it was made has been substantially modified by a winding back of the proposed terminal hours of some of the licensable activities. These revised hours are set before you with an offer from the applicant's then agent dated the 30th of June. I ask now that you consider the application formally amended to reflect those later offered hours. Thank you all. The next thing we need to recognise is that several local residents have filed relevant representations, mainly objecting to the hours proposed in the original application. The applicant, as you now know, reflected upon those concerns and wound back substantially on those hours, as you have just seen and accepted. Indeed, as a result of those revised hours, several representations have been withdrawn. For example, the public protection team initially made a representation around the possibility of excess noise being generated during the hours originally proposed and conducted a joint visit to the premises on the 19th of May. Following that visit and the submission of these much reduced hours proposal, the public protection team have withdrawn their representation. Thus, the go-to responsible authority on matters of public nuisance, which includes noise and disturbance, has examined this application with all the proposed conditions around loading taking place in the rear yard and only use of electric vehicles or bicycles during the hours now sought, and have found that the application does indeed support the licensing objectives. Were it not to, they would be here arguing vehemently against it this afternoon. Similarly, once the offer of the reduced hours was made known to them, a number of public representations were withdrawn, as this was their main concern. Clearly, those other representations, therefore, are gone and do not fall within your consideration today, therefore. So we are left with some of the original public representations. Now, some reference the previous loss of the premises licence due to breach of COVID regulations. Well, as I told you, that was then, this is now. Thankfully, those COVID days are hopefully, God willing, soon behind us all, as we lift almost all of those at the beginning of next week. But as I explained earlier, this is a new application from a new applicant with a new DPS. What went on before has no bearing on the process before you today. We have no representations from public health, from public protection, or the police that refer in any way to any likelihood of repetition or indeed any other possible cause of the licensing objectives being undermined. Some representatives talk of parking or the need for another restaurant, or the true need for another restaurant at this location. You will, of course, know that both matters are outside the ambit of the licensing legislation. A few speculate about a possible rise in crime or ASB, but again, fear and speculation are again outside your purview under the dictum of the famous Voight's case. The majority of public reps talk of noise, and therefore, to reassure you, the original application explains that no refuse shall be deposited or collected from the premises between the hours of 7 at night and 7 in the morning on any day, that the management and staff will carry out with regard to their own personal safety their best endeavours to disperse any of their customers who appear to be loitering outside the immediate area of the restaurant, and that notices will be displayed in a prominent position to remind customers to leave the area quickly and quietly, and to respect local residents. But we've gone further in that we stipulate that all loading or delivery orders will take place only in the rear yard, which I understand is only overlooked by the language college next door. And we will only use electric vehicles or bicycles to deliver those orders. I do this all over the country, frankly, and we believe that this is the first time that such an ecologically sound condition has ever been offered in our experience in the last 5 years. You will be aware that there are already 2 other restaurants operating in Upper St Giles Street opposite these premises. So this application, on its face value, is not remarkable in what is generally a commercial area, at least at the ground level, with a mix of some residential properties, generally in the upper levels. What may differentiate members of the panel between it and the comparative restaurants opposite is the facility for home deliveries. I might need some water for that. So, why does the applicant want that functionality around home deliveries? The answer is simple. The development of an app-based society, followed by COVID lockdowns, has educated the public to socialise and interact with supplying customers in a different way. We, as agents and consultants, have seen a huge growth in operators providing home delivery of food and drink over recent years, and a further fold increase since the onset of COVID, as the public have become accustomed to ordering their food and wine online or on an app and having it delivered to them in the comfort of their own homes. This way of doing business has become a safe and successful operating model for many businesses up and down the UK. This applicant simply wants to be able to offer the same service to the residents of and visitors to this great city. Now, we have demonstrated that we are not insensitive to the concerns raised by the remaining public representations. Furthermore, we are more acutely aware than anybody else of what can ensue if a premises licence is brought to review before this licensing subcommittee. That is why, in our submission, this business will be more than attentive to strict adherence to the conditions that have been offered and that you set around the promotion of the licensing objectives. We come before you with a much trimmed down application, supported by new and innovative ways to prevent public uses in the form of noise. If, however, there are still further conditions that you consider proportionate and appropriate to this grant, then we will, of course, be pleased to consider them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, please help yourself to water. We have a representative here from police, Michelle, as you know, and a member of the public, and we'll hear from you shortly, please. When our agent returns to his seat, I'll ask members to put some questions. So if you'd like to go first. Shall I start? Okay. So first of all, we have we discussed before the meeting. We have submitted some new hours, and we'd like to just clarify those because there appears that there might be a discrepancy.
There is discrepancy. I apologise on Maxie and to your legal advisor. The legal advisor sorted it out, sir, and what is before her and before you is right. It was an error in our office back in Hereford.
Okay, so for the benefit of members here and the public that might be interested watching currently, please could you describe what those new hours are in full, please?
Yes.
Do you have the paperwork, or would you like?
Actually, the legal advisor can I use?
Okay, we have copies here of additional conditions offered on the 30th of June, and I'll run through those first. So if there's any change to the ones that were presented on the 30th of June, point them out to me as we run through them, or if you know them, indicate now.
Again, your legal advisor has the up-to-date version of the resolve this by email, so I'm going to have to go into my emails to work out where this document is from.
Sarah, would you like to indicate which times have changed?
Yeah, okay. So looking at the Friday and Saturday, for the takeaway for consumption off premises, it reads 2,300 hours as the last food order, but on the email of 30th of June, it was 2,200 hours. So are you now saying that this is the correct one, or the one?
Yeah, whatever was on the original email regarding exemptions.
Thank you. Similarly, so on New Year's Eve, we've got the last food delivery as being 1:30 AM. So in the email of the 30th of June, the last delivery there was 2 AM, which would seem to coincide. You've got here the last alcohol delivery being 2 AM.
You're absolutely right, ma'am, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify the hours for late night refreshments on Friday and Saturday will revert to 10 o'clock and not 11 o'clock. Is that correct? And does that also apply to sale of alcohol?
So the last food delivery at 1:30.
The last food delivery
No, 2 AM.
for 2 AM. Okay, and what is the change? What is the change that requires 10 o'clock and not 11 o'clock?
Stanley, sir, I made a note on this and I've initialed it, so if you allow me to approach it from.
Right. Can you show, in fact, I've not initialed that one. Can you show the gentleman, the panel, please? Those two alterations, and that's the correct one, I apologise.
Okay, thank you. I've made similar notes on my paper, so we have the final offered conditions in terms of time. Thank you. Okay, so Maxi, we have 4 members of the public that have withdrawn their objections. Can you tell us who those, which page numbers also they refer to? It's important for us to consider those objections and that they have been removed. Do you have that detail?
Yeah, got it. Just
Okay,
pages. Right, okay. I've got the objector, Mr. Jonathan Baker. That's on page 41. I've got Hannah Cott. That's on page 49. And I've got Barry Wheeland on page 70 of the agenda. And I've got Mr. Peter Womack on page 72. They're the 4 that have withdrawn their objections. So,
And I'll cover that. Okay, so we've got page 41, the objection there has been withdrawn. Page 49, also page 70 and 72. So 4 individuals from the location have withdrawn their objections. Okay, any questions from councillors before we move on? Okay, so I'm interested to learn what has happened with this restaurant between the January hearing, where the licence was revoked, and now. A number of the objectors have stated that the business appears to be operating in one form or another, and I'm interested to learn what's actually happening there, please. What's the current situation?
Right. He wants to know where the business was between January and now. Some of these people are saying that you are already selling and operating business. So you want 7 minutes?
Hello, everyone. So, would you mind just removing your mask, just while you speak, if that's okay? Thank you.
So at the moment, I'm trying to open a business differently. So the business was really low. My value was working, so I'm closed at the moment. I'm not operating. I want to learn the decision what's going to happen after, and I can learn it different because I'm more interested to open the park on the front. That's a big restaurant.
Particularly asked how is the business being operated between January when it closed because of the breach of COVID and now? How are you operating? Are you selling food from there?
No.
Okay, Michelle, I'll turn to you. In your representation, you said that you visited the restaurant. Can you describe that visit, please?
When we attended, we went around the back of the premises, which does sort of feature as an entrance to the actual separate bit in the back, and there were a number of people seated having meals, so it did appear to be like a cafe set up. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many people were there, but it was running. And I believe the applicant's mum was there as well, because Olga introduced her. She was cleaning and helping the time as well. And we could smell food as well, so it was operating. I'm not going to say it was an alcohol, because it wasn't.
Okay, and was there was Mr. Zeffalari there?
Roger wasn't, his brother Olga was there at the time.
Okay,
He
thank
said he
you.
wasn't there.
Thank you. Okay, so can you describe that arrangement, please, what you're actually doing on those days when you have people there?
Actually, on the day when we camping, it was a family gathering. It's called that. And it was not working as a business. It was our friends and family. It wasn't running as a business. There was no customer.
Okay, thank you. And another family occasion. Okay, okay, we have a objector here with us, and I think I'd like to hear from you. So can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is David Cole. I live next door to the premises I'm racing for, and I've owned the house for 25 years. Do I continue to speak? Or?
Please continue, please.
Yes, we've had over those 25 years, we've had several restaurants running there successfully. We've never made any objections or anything. Through the last 3 years, we're puzzled about what's been going on because the shop has been renovated a couple of times, but it's never really been open to the public. So I can understand the last year, the 18 months or 2 years before that, this was the public. Other our councillor speaks on behalf of the street where visitors knows us all very well. I'd just like to say that, I think the council do have a double responsibility for this premises because they are the landlords as well as of the municipal. So, I would like you to take into consideration that not someone else's landlord, the council on landlords themselves, which I think is quite significant. And I do feel that if we do grant a licence, it should definitely be provisional. And I would like it to be 6 months, if that's possible. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe, as you're very close there, can you describe what has been happening at this location in the last 6 months, for example?
Well, there's not much on the front, because as suggested, there's an alleyway down the other side of my premises. So I think I've seen people coming and going there, but that hasn't disturbed me personally. So I don't know what's been going on with that. But from the last month or so, since we've been making changing the design and putting in factory, etc. So things with manufacturing shop. So that's all I know basically.
Okay, thank you.
So I can confirm I was Francis last week, and it was being refurbished, just finishing off putting some light fittings in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, would you like to respond to anything else that Michelle and our objector has stated?
Right, well, first of all, I just want to remind you that Michelle's told you that we won't sell alcohol on the visit
Yeah,
application.
that was noted, yes.
Also, that gentleman's been puzzled for the last 3 years, but it's never been open to the public. And there's not much going on up front. And they've not disturbed me personally. That's very helpful, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schmira is here, Ward Councillor, so Mancroft, covering this area, and you'd like to address the committee.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Obviously, I'm also speaking as a local resident. I live just down the road and just off Pottergate, so probably a couple hundred metres away. So I know the area incredibly well, both in sort of professional capacity and in personal capacity. There are a few points I would like to pick up, if I may, Chair, in particular about what the applicant agent said. First of all, he mentioned about the public protection officers authority on this. I would actually argue that the public themselves, local residents and neighbours, are indeed the go-to authority. They're the ones who, as we've heard from one of the objectors who lives next door, they're the ones who are going to be most impacted by this and know the area in most detail. As the agent had also said, that the primary concerns regard noise, and of course I would like to reiterate to the committee a couple of things on that notion, on that topic in particular. Firstly, this idea, of course, that in our licensing policy it talks about the need for applicants to be good neighbours as part of their operating schedule. And I do appreciate, of course, that the applicant has been willing to make some sort of minor additional conditions, as outlined in this document that has been circulated today, in terms of LSA conditions, but also in terms of the operating schedule. However, in my mind, and indeed the minds of those residents, many residents who have maintained their objections, and the residents with whom I have spoken, there are still considerable concerns, and I think that these are always implacable concerns when it comes to the issue of the home delivery, which goes on until 2 in the morning from Sunday to Thursday, and alcohol that goes on until something like 1:30 in the morning, which the agent has also referred to the other restaurants on the street. Indeed, there are 2 other restaurants and indeed many other eateries along that street, but these are not comparable in that regard. These do not, as far as I'm aware, have any kind of home delivery option going on beyond the operating hours, which they do, which, as far as I'm aware, go until midnight at the latest, with maybe some exceptions when it comes to things like New Year's Day, which obviously we can accept. So I think asking residents to locally to have the fabric of the streets changed and it become more akin to a late night economy zone is imposing considerable changes on an area in particular when it comes to the licensing objectives regarding public nuisance and also public safety, but in particular, as I said, public nuisance. And obviously, if I may remind the committee members that what is meant by public nuisance is to be, and I quote here, interpreted in its widest sense, and will take it to include such issues as noise, light, odour, litter, and antisocial behaviour where these matters impact on those living, working, or otherwise engaged in normal activity in an area. And I would say that these changes, even as amended in terms of this operating schedule and these operating times, in particular this the home delivery is going to cause issues. And it's not just regarding noise, because it's all very well, of course, saying that you're going to have bicycles and electric cars going down into the alley. Of course, there's going to be issues about enforcement with regards to that, but even if that were to happen, there is still the issue of traffic in that area. This is a narrow road in a medieval city, and a lot of the objectors in this document in front of you do refer to that fact. And so, in my opinion, the obvious thing, and this is before I even refer to issues which I'm sure I'll leave to Michelle and the police about the sort of around the issue of the owner and that, but I would argue that if this is to be granted, and that is of course a massive if, that there should be no home delivery option that goes beyond the operating hours as outlined. So if the last alcohol order, for example, is 10 o'clock, that is also the last home delivery time on that. And similarly, for regards to food delivery, we need to remember the character of an area. We need to remember, and I mentioned, the residents of an area. Granting this application in its current form would be an affront to them, and therefore, as I say, at this moment, I could not support this application, and that's the reason for my presence here today.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to that? Can I just take your name again for my own benefit?
Lisa, my name is Nick Samper.
Samper, thank you, Mr. Samper. Yes, please respond.
Okay. Right. I'm awfully sorry, the council must have misheard me. Inasmuch as he's credited me saying the go-to authority is not the public body of affairs. I didn't say that. I said the go-to responsible authority on matters of public nuisance is the public protection team. That's a matter of fact. So it's responsible authority, not authority. Secondly, we absolutely get the need to be condemned. We want to be condemned. That's why we've offered bicycle delivery service. Now, again, we are not insensitive to what the council is saying and what the other residents are saying. And if you, sir, find that it is 1:30, 2 o'clock, it's too late to feel like, we'll go with that. We have no choice. By the way, the one thing I didn't address you on is the possibility of provisional license. I don't think that was a runner that came up earlier on. I forgot to address you on that. Right, lastly, it's not going to be a late night economy zone. We are a restaurant. We are a food-led premises. This is not a vertical drinking establishment. There is no licensable activities around music, live recording on the license line for you. Therefore, it is just not right that we are going to become a late night promenade, vibrant hub somewhere in that suggestion. And lastly, with gross respect, traffic is not, although a concern I get, it is not a concern for the licensing to go the wrong road. It's planning. If there were issues, then clearly highways authority would be here. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The objector that we have, member of the public that we have today, or Councillor Schmier, would you like to address any questions to the applicant's agent? Yeah, please.
I'd just like to say that You said the public protection team drawn their objections. To me, I think the councillors' views and residents trump that myself. It's my personal opinion.
Okay, so just to confirm, Mr. Semper, your view on the residents and councillors' representations.
So I'm not trying to denigrate or undervalue their opinions at all. We have been so sensitive to their concerns that we've already wound back this application in its hours and scope already. Not a minute ago, I said that as a response to what the good councillor has said about the concerns of his ward, if you yourselves find 1:30 and 2 o'clock too late for the home delivery service, and it is well within your grant to adjust the hours accordingly. We've explained why we don't think you need to. Clearly, if you do, we accept that, so that's why we're here.
Okay, thank you. A number of objectors, and I don't think they're on those that have been removed, talked about an existing problem with noise and antisocial behaviour, car doors, slamming. Is that, can you respond to that? And do you accept that that has been a problem?
Yes, so you've already taken evidence of the fact the place has been closed. There's a pre-existing problem with noise, car doors, slamming, and whatever. You need to be looking to another premises that's responsible for that. These guys have not been trained.
We've heard evidence that the restaurant has not been serving alcohol, but we've not heard evidence that it's necessarily been closed. Can you use your mic, please?
It's trying to work out the dates. I'm asking, right, because the gentleman's asked, has your restaurant been trading as a restaurant between January, when we had the hearing, and present? We're not talking about selling alcohol. Have you been trading as a restaurant? No, it's the hearing. It's the hearing happened on the 19th of January. But don't get tied up after that. No, okay, he's not been trading since January. So.
Okay, you have had guests at your restaurant during that time, whether they're invited guests, family members, you have had that. And members of the public have reported a noise nuisance from that or when the restaurant had a license. So can you address that? Are you accepting that there was a noise nuisance, antisocial behaviour, car doors slamming late at night, and other noise issues from the premises?
Yes, sir, I'm not here to call anybody alarm. I just want to call your attention to the offer we've already made around public nuisance. The original application now states that there will be no refuse that will be disposed of or collected from the premises between 7 and 7. That the management staff will carry out to their best regard, their best endeavours to disperse any customers that appear to be loitering outside the immediate area of the restaurant. Notices will be displayed upon position to remind customers to leave the area quickly and quietly and to respect local residents. If, sir, you think that the slamming of car doors on the use of electric vehicles does not address the slamming of car doors in that rear yard, let's just make bicycles only delivery or electric bicycles only, because that again will negate the possibility of slamming car doors.
Okay. Are you offering that as a condition to the committee today?
Sir, I would accept any condition that you believe is appropriate to the grant of this application.
Okay, so just to confirm, are you offering the condition of electric bicycles or other forms of bicycle only?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Yusuf, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a follow-up question about the visit
the joint police and council visit, which took place on the 25th of May 2021. Now, I recognise that you're stating that this was a family event, but it's written here on page 38 that Olga was in charge of the premises at the time. I was just wondering if the applicant could respond to that, please.
Yes, I thought it was the 19th of May, since the 25th, whatever. Okay. Yes. Now, the client's memory of the events of that visit was that, yes, indeed, Olga was there on the day, and he was front of house. There was a conversation with the police. The police did not seem to have a particular issue with Olga being present on the premises at that time and operating in that role. Furthermore, there were discussions between the police and the previous agent which confirmed that position. It's become apparent over the last month that maybe that position has altered or wasn't fully understood, and therefore, certainly in the last month, Olga is out of that restaurant.
Yeah, do you have a follow-up?
Can I just clarify what you mean by out of the restaurant?
As concerns the licensing requirements, as concerns the licensing act, as concerns the applications before you today, he can clearly go visit his brother at the restaurant to whether he has any role within the licensing act 2003 in the operation of that license or the application for it.
And can I ask what the role was as of the 25th of May?
There was no role, man, because there was the licensing, there was no license and there was no role within the licensing legislation extant on the 25th of May. I'm sorry to get the date wrong before I'm speaking.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell, please. Yeah, we'll just wait for Mr. Sanford to return to his seat. Please do. Take as much as you need. Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell, if you'd like to address the question, please.
Listening to what you were saying, it has absolutely no dealings at all. And you look at this email that's at the 8th of July, where he's saying it's a registered tenant and the landlord's recognised owner of the lease. So, but that's not anything to do with the restaurant. And he's spoken about working with his brother who will take on the licence and accept it. Now you just told us, excuse my voice, you just told us it's having nothing to do with this at all. And yet this is included in that. If you could just explain to me.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, I really must.
Can I finish my question?
Sorry.
Yeah. If you could explain to me why this is coming from, where is it going to sit? What is going to happen? And really, and truly, is it having nothing to do with it at all?
Thank you. Just before you answer, clearly the email we received from the police suggests that Mr. Olga Zafari has had and maintained interest in the business, both as the leaseholder and a presence as recently as May. And you described him as being front of house at the time of that visit. So when you address the that particular question, can you just confirm, because I'm still failing a little bit to understand the role that Mr. Olga Zafari has at the moment.
Right, so I said he may have been in front of house at the time of the visit. Okay, I wasn't there. Hopefully, the police will tell us exactly what they perceive Olga's role to be that day. Bearing in mind, it hasn't been functioning as a restaurant since January. Okay, Right. The police make much of the fact that the lease to the building is still in Olga's name. The lease is still in Olga's name. There is an email before you from Mr. Reed. It is dated, the email is dated, but the conversation is not attributed to any particular time. However, it's all to do with the leasehold. For the purposes of the Licensing Act, the applicant for the premises licence in front of you only has to have a qualification in accordance with section 16(1)(a) of the Licensing Act, i.e. that he's a person who carries on, who intends to carry on licensable activities from the premises to which the application relates. Your legal advisor will confirm that proprietary interests in premises are not referred to anywhere in the Act, and therefore whoever's name is on that list is wholly irrelevant to the licensing legislation and the application for you. Okay, a mention has been made that email. I'll have to go over it again, I'm often sorry. But if you look at the email, look at paragraph 3, line 3, it says he, Aldred, would retain the lease of the property under his name and be responsible for paying the rent, good, because it's rent to the City Council, whilst his brother, Clodjan, would handle the day-to-day business, i.e. licensing requirements. In my submission, this is a critical statement because it clearly evidences that Clodjan is the party taking on the licensing requirements. And this indeed is a licensing hearing today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Sefalari, what will be your arrangement for paying the rent, or is your brother going to offer that payment of rent without receiving anything from your business?
It might be if your microphone is still on.
Yes, we've got Councillor Maxwell, you can turn yours off as well. That should work now. Okay.
So the rent going to be paid by me, by him, but the money is going by the residents. I'm going to be the guy who's going to pay the rent, but the problem is on the lease, because we cannot change the lease now because it's too much money to solve the lease, which we're going to do on the future.
Okay, when does the lease expire, current lease?
We've tried to change this. The letting agent tells Zafalari Groups that you need to pay the council for their legal process because the premises is owned by the council. That costs £1,750. The letting agent, because these guys are separate parties, they want individual solicitors, separate solicitors allocated to each of these guys. The prices for having a separate solicitor oversee the transfer of a lease is £2,300 for him and £2,650 for Olga. So I haven't got those figures in front of me, I'm afraid, because I was only aware of today because it would have been great if it had been resolved. But I make that £6,700 to assign that lease in legal fees alone. And this is business, it's not trade, it has no. They haven't just refurbished the place, changed the refurbished in writing. And I haven't got £6,700 to take one brother off the lease for the City Council and put another one on yet.
Okay, thank you. The lease then, effectively, we're talking about a sublease.
No, just assigning the lease from Norwich City Council from Allgood to Clodjan. But you know what's? I think I wouldn't want to bore you, but what I'm trying to tell you is actually the lease There is no proprietary interest mentioned in the licensing act or in the licensing regulations or in statutory guidance anywhere in licensing legislations. I'm relying on the lawyers.
Okay, thank you.
It's actually irrelevant.
Yeah, what we're trying to establish is the representation that we have from the police suggests that there's a connection between the two brothers that we would need to consider as a committee. So I'm asking details about this in order to make that judgment. So I'm going to ask Michelle Bartram, please, police licensing officer. Can you address the committee, describe, add some detail to the conversations that you've had, and basically describe your current view on this application, please.
Chair, if I could just go through what I've got here. As per my representation, Norfolk Police felt it was appropriate to give Norwich City Council the opportunity to be consulted on this application and involved in the decision due to the fact they took serious action and revoked the last premises licence at this address because of the association of the new applicant and the previous operator. During the consultation period, police carried out their checks and felt there were some points that needed further clarification. In addition, local residents contacted me directly with concerns about the hours being inappropriate for the area and potential disruption to them. They also highlighted the concern about the same management running the premises. I understand there's no changes to the original application in terms of opening hours. The application offers conditions to promote the prevention of crime and disorder, and these include the installation of CCTV, Challenge 25 policy, staff training, and alcohol being ancillary to food. With this, it's felt there were no further conditions that needed to be added. The applicant is Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited of 77 Long John Hill, and the company was incorporated on the 14th of May. Flodjan is shown as the sole director, but the registered address is the same as his brother Olga, the previous licence holder in DPS. It is accepted that the previous issues with the last operator related to breaches of the coronavirus restrictions, which is how the licence got revoked. Norfolk Police believe the City Council should be consulted so the councillors can carefully examine and establish if they believe there will be any undermining of the licensing objectives if granted, and to check that the application is not a way to bypass the previous revocation. We felt there was a few points which contradicted the new application. Firstly, the lease, which we've heard about. The lease of the premises remains in Olgat's name. Olgat Zafalari informed me that the lease remained in this name, and the email from Darren Reed also confirms this. I understand from the both that there is a large financial penalty to change this. So in effect, Olgat will remain as the leaseholder and be the person responsible for paying the rent. A food registration form was also submitted to Norwich City Council food team on behalf of Durez Foods on the 3rd of May. This was the original company who held the licence when it was revoked. I was later informed by the food team that there was an update on the 24th of May that this may change, and I'm now aware that this has now been updated. It does seem strange that the food registration form for Durez Foods, which Olga is the director for, would apply during this time if he was moving away from the business. The application for a new premises licence was applied for online on the 17th of May, 2 weeks later. I appreciate Olga is more experienced with this process, but I'm confused why he didn't put Flodjan's name on it. In addition, we saw the Facebook post. This Facebook post shows Olga advertising for bar staff and was dated on the 19th of May, which is again after the application. I do accept there's a further comment from Flodjan responding, and I've included this to show clarity. An impromptu visit was carried out with police licensing and City Council Officer Richard Divey on the 25th of May to meet Flodjan and to discuss the application. During this visit, the premises was opening and operating as a restaurant. My colleague asked who was in charge, and Olga came forward and said he was. This may have been a coincidence. During this visit, we had a discussion with Olga. Olga wanted to clarify the situation. He said that he had invested a lot of money into the premises and was tied into a long lease, and therefore his brother would be involved in the premises day to day. He also questioned me if he was able to still work there, as he seemed to think he wasn't allowed. I informed him that although the premises licence had been revoked, there was no reason why he couldn't be on site. This question was also put to me by the previous agent, Mr. Clark. Claude did contact me after my visit to arrange another meeting, but unfortunately I couldn't make that due to commitments. During the consultation period, I discussed my concerns with the previous agent, Mr. Clark, and suggested that the use of TENS would be advisable prior to the hearing. This would give us the opportunity to find out Claude's involvement and ability to manage the premises. These TENS did not appear, but I understand there's now been a change of agent, which may have been a factor. I would like to clarify that although the licence was revoked, this was due to coronavirus breaches. There had been no other issues of crime and disorder at the premises recorded under Olgott's management. I'm not here today to insist that the application is refused, and I also appreciate that the Environmental Health team are not here raising concerns. As a responsible authority, we believe it is our duty to place all the available information to the committee for you to make an informed decision, particularly due to the recent revocation in relationship between the parties. If the City Council are satisfied that there is a new named DPS and have no new concerns relating to the compliance or undermining the licensing objectives, then I see no reason why it should not be granted. However, out of courtesy and for clarity, we felt it best to be discussed and put to you so you were involved in the decision-making process.
Thank you very much for that. So you've confirmed that you have no issues with the conditions that have been submitted and offered. So on a police crime and disorder situation, you have no objections.
In terms of the conditions you mentioned, I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be added. They've included a lot under the schedule for that. It was just obviously the concern about the management, which we've heard more about today.
Thank you. Okay, so has your view changed about the management and the connection between the two Mr. Zeffalaris, Albert and Kodjan? Do you believe that there is still a strong connection between the two, and do you still have concerns about that? Or in other words, do you still consider that the application is a circumnavigation attempt?
I believe they're close brothers. I mean, obviously they live together, and we've seen them from previous visits that they're often together. I suspect Albert will still be there during visits in the future. In terms of coronavirus, as the agent said, hopefully that won't be so much of an issue. And I am aware, obviously, Albert did pay the fine, and he does seem very remorseful about the incident. So in terms of crime and disorder, I don't feel that there is anything else for us to bring to the table to do today. However, we didn't want it to look like we just accepted it without speaking to the friends.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sandler, would you like to respond to any of those issues points, please?
Yeah, can I just be clear on something? What licensing objective is the police representation attached? What, in your representation, which is the relevant licensing objective you're referring to, ma'am?
In terms of prevention of crime and disorder, there had been crime in terms of the breaches of the coronavirus restrictions and disregard to the law, which is why the licence was revoked before.
That's good. Now, the coronavirus legislation has changed since the 10th of November when this occurred. And it's actually going out the window, well, not going out the window, it's radically Freedom Day is next week. Right. So going forward, what crime and disorder are you addressing?
We were just concerned that somebody who's had a licence revoked would be operating, and they were concerned about his ability to manage and comply.
Again, I just need to be absolutely clear on this. What licensing objective are you speaking to going forward in your realm?
Crime and disorder.
The one last question. What crime and disorder are you trying to prevent today?
A bypassing of the licensing legislation, but other than that, there's no other crime and disorder concerns raised at this address.
Okay, thank you. So, given what we've heard, you're telling the committee that you believe there's a strong link between the two brothers, not least because they live together. They have they share this space either as an applicant for the license or as leaseholders. And your concern or concerns as the committee are that the previous license holder will have an input into this, and that's what we have to discuss and determine. However, are you content that the clear connection between the two is no longer a cause for concern in terms of the licensing objectives that we have to consider?
Because I think it's not as a personal license holder will be DPS in its own right. We've got somebody responsible there. As I said, I believe they will be linked in terms of the brothers. I think they share business enterprises together, so I suspect he will be there operating. But we have got somebody else, a new person in effect on the license. Whether you could say they are one person because they are so linked, that would be enough for yourselves. But in terms of crime and disorder, like I said, other than the fact that they are associated with each other, there isn't anything else for me to highlight in terms of crime and disorder.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to come back on that, Sam?
Yes, Mr. Clerk, officer, I see no reason why it can't be granted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the member. Just remind me of your name again, please.
David Cole.
David Cole, thank you. Mr. Cole, would you like to ask any further
I'd
questions?
just like to say that there's an ongoing concern about the applicants acting with impunity, really. I mean, there's a notice outside my house for about 3 months saying the police were actively seeking the address of the license holder or leaseholder. I'm sure exactly which. There's also some information about the people next door in the restaurant. So anybody acting normally would obviously come forward and give that information. Notices outside my house for 2 months.
Okay, I don't know about this. Maxine, are you familiar with that, or Michelle?
Yeah, well, obviously the notice is there now, but it was a notice from the police saying we are seeking information regarding the owners or the leaseholder or whatever it was, or probably next door.
Okay,
so I assume that they didn't respond. That's all I'm saying. All this sort of thing gives the street sort of you're apprehensive about whether they're going to do what they say in the future.
Okay, was that attached to the building act number 82?
Well, I've got a post outside the parking sign. It was on the parking sign and was there for at least 2 months.
Okay, do you know anything about
I know absolutely nothing about it, so with 30 years experience of police inspection, so he knows nothing about it. I have never heard of any tactic like that used by legitimate police forces.
that? Okay, I think
I can only assume it's a frequency.
I'll turn to Sarah for the benefit of this committee. Should we disregard that statement?
Yes, Michelle, I don't think that as the police, but it's not something I've heard of before.
Yes, please, Peter.
So,
Mr. Carr.
yeah, basically what people are saying is that they don't believe you, basically, which are objective. That's not at all what I'm saying.
It's absolutely not what I'm saying, sir.
No,
Please do
okay.
not take that. It's just that I've never heard of a police force advertising for people to come forward, giving evidence about occupants and what other houses like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, amongst other things, there are many ways we can find out exactly scope of grant or interest in premises.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Cephalari.
I wanted to say something because it's really weird. I'm very but my neighbor, which I really respect him, he saw us all the time staying there. So if police have something with me or my brother, we was there all the time. We go our address, we leave somewhere, so I don't think if they had something with us, they can come to our house. That's what I mean. It's weird.
Okay.
There at the time, if they want to contact us, you have seen us there all the time. So.
Okay, I think maybe this is a detail that we won't consider, but mainly because we don't know what that notice encompassed.
Need to go through, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Schmier. Okay, I don't think anyone was suggesting that notice wasn't there. It's just the detail on that notice that we can't ascertain at this stage. Okay. Well, any questions for applicants? Okay. Yes. Sarah.
Thank you. I'd quite like to go through the conditions, just for the benefit of the committee, that they are clear in what is actually being offered.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Just to make clear to everybody present, this is just clarifying what conditions are being offered and may not actually be granted at this stage.
I have a very strong position because I didn't grant these. I picked up this job second hand, so let's go.
Okay, just looking at section 1.2 about the CCTV system, you said it should have sufficient hard drive storage capacity to store a minimum of 28 days. Obviously, that will then have the capability of it, but are you intending, or what would you be intending that CCTV to be recorded? And so for a minimum of 28 days?
Yes, for a minimum of 28 days. However, many systems do not operate when there is nothing to see. Move operates the camera. Now, if you want to record an awful lot of darkness on a hard drive, so no words whatsoever. Yes, that's quite a big hard drive. 28 days is not a great deal going on, right? Because nothing, short of cat going through, then you just get a couple of seconds. If nothing happens, then nothing happens. Now, what they put down there is that this officer can turn up, and he's responsible or a person under section 18 to act can turn up within 28 days with reasonable excuse or on demand, whatever reason cause, and ask for footage of what then and there took place. That's what that condition is about.
Right, so recordings will be retained for 28 days?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Would you have any objection if I added that in?
I have no objection whatsoever.
Okay.
You got to remember that at the end of the day, this panel will have what this panel wants. That's what you want. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, I just want to be clear just exactly what you want me to do.
Sure.
In that case, could I perhaps look at just further down 1.5? So we've got the downloaded footage can be provided to the police and the local authority officer at reasonable request. Obviously can, but possibly the committee will be looking for more shall, must, that sort of thing.
Whatever you want.
In that case, could I suggest perhaps amending section 1.2 to something on the lines of CCTV recordings will be retained for a period of 28 days and should be provided to the police and all officers of the licensed authority on request?
On reason.
On reasonable request. Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on to so 1.3. So currently CCTV is stationed at each exit and entrance. Is there any reason why you would be recording inside the restaurant?
Well, I'm not hoping that, but I didn't write these up. The fact of the matter is what you want is a camera on the server and the person on a second camera over their shoulder on the purchaser. And then you can see the challenge 25 is going on. So given for Michelle and I am surprised that the goodly Norfolk Public Constabulary haven't got a set of standard CCTV conditions that apply right across the piece. And if there are, let's get them on the table now and serve you an awful lot of drafting.
Michelle.
We have got some, is it breaking down on this? We obviously want this part of it. I don't think it's
Yes, thank you. Yes, I mean, the conditions that were offered here are quite comprehensive. It's actually quite refreshing to see a good number of offered conditions. I think Sarah is just trying to.
Yeah, well, no, you're doing a cracking job, so what would you do? We recognise that things went wrong back in the family that ended up here in January. These guys are genuinely sorry. They just need to start again. You've got to avoid premises that isn't training, and you just come here, cap in hand. Whatever you want in the way of conditions, within reason.
Okay. I note that you refer to these guys, and they need to start again. Is that Mr. Is that Olgert and?
So it's just a reference to the business. Clearly, it's the applicant and Mediterranean Fine Dining Limited is the applicant business.
Okay, thank you. That's Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Could I clarify for the State Committee food orders? So on 2.1, alcohol may be sold auxiliary with food orders. What does that mean exactly?
Right, well, clearly it's food-led premises, food-led operation. Now, I'm not going to be selling lots and lots of alcohol to bicycles have been all over the Norwich, moving out into people's homes. It is only going to get serious in order to food. If you want a minimum value on the order of food, where you go? £5 is standards.
Okay, well, perhaps I could direct the question to Mr. Zakamari. What were you intending for a food order, or was it going to be a minimum amount of food order? For alcohol would be ordered.
Minimum order of £5.
I think elsewhere in the documents we've got a £10. It states at £10.
Yes.
Are you happy with that?
Well, 4 5 is perfectly reasonable. So,
Yeah, would you like to change it to £5?
well, if it's all possible, so, look, I'm just going with what Sarah suggested. So,
you seem to be frustrated by going through these details. This is the
no, I'm
this is
frustrated.
the application that we've received.
Yes, I'm frustrated with myself.
Yeah, if you just let me finish, please. This is the conditions that we've been offered, and therefore it's the operating schedule that Mr. Zeffalari would be required to operate under if we're likely to grant a license. So therefore, we do need to get the detail right.
Of course, I couldn't agree more. So I'm just frustrated with myself that I'm not better briefed on my son's content of these conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies.
Sarah, do you have
Thank you. There are a number of kind of, I suppose, typos or that sort of thing. Bearing in mind what you said, would you be happy for me just to amend as I think relevant?
Of course.
Okay, rather than going through absolutely every little thing.
Absolutely.
It would make it easy for me if you
Yes,
without changing the actual content of what is meant,
yes, ma'am.
just to rewrite.
There will be standard conditions and not all the conditions acceptable to everybody or accepted by this licensing authority. And that should always be our guiding light.
So, just to clarify then, the refusals book is recording all refusals on sale of alcohol, am I right?
Yes.
And section 5 on DPS is not on duty, a contact telephone number would that be related to DPS and their contact number.
Yes.
There's reference to section 6, the driver rules code, and I imagine that's the delivery driver.
Yes. Very different. Bicycles, because of the rider.
Could you just clarify a little bit on section 8.3? The manager and staff will carry out with regard to their own personal safety their best endeavours to disperse any of their customers that appear to be loitering outside the immediate area of the restaurant. What exactly is meant by that?
Yes, it's not their job to have the legal authority to release the public space. What they're saying is that they will take responsibility for their customers if they're upset with Mr. Cole in his house next door, ask them to move on. Loads of premises use this kind of thing. You know, the doorman do not cease the moment they put somebody out the door. They send somebody to a waiting police officer or a waiting taxi or a waiting ambulance. It's all part of the dispersal cost. So that's SJMC's version of that. They're not expected to put themselves in harm's way, but what they are. It's not permissible for them to let riot loose in the street outside and not do their best to address it.
So would it be fair to say then, if there was a situation beyond your control, that you would then phone the relevant authority?
Yes, of course.
And you are happy if I were to put that in within the
Yes.
condition? In terms of the notices, we have talked a little bit about slamming car doors and that sort of thing. Would you be agreeable to including that within the notice?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And also revenue agents, those sorts of things?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear that you are offering a condition that the outdoor tables in the rear courtyard are closed at 9 o'clock every day. It's in here in the pricing, but I'm checking that that is part of the conditions. I think it's
If that's what's mentioned here, it's 2100, I'm sure.
2100 hours, yeah. And what would be meant by closed? Food and alcohol not being served? and
Put beyond, usually the term is put beyond use, i.e. put away.
Final question. Your last food delivery being 2 AM, does that mean that your last food delivery will leave the premises at 2 AM or will all your vehicles be back at 2 AM?
The last food delivery will leave the premises at 2 AM. But I think we've been overtaken by events on that because I've already recognised clearly that there's a level of acceptability around the representatives here. I'm offering a good panel their opportunity to set their own limit on what they think is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Are you offering a particular time or inviting the members to set a time for you which you will accept?
Well, look, it seems to me, this last page here, we've got the opening times. Okay. If we just said the operating times here on it, end of sports, closing time 2300 hours, Sunday to Thursday, Friday and Saturday midnight, New Year's Eve, 1 o'clock. That is keeping it pretty straightforward.
Yes, it is in terms of closing. So just to confirm, you're offering the food deliveries to leave the premises no later than those times, and similarly, the last orders will match the last orders for within the restaurant to match those times.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, anything else? Yes, just one more question relating to Olgert, please, and that is Tony Clark sent an email to Maxine and Michelle and included Olgert in that email rather than Kodjan. Can you explain that?
I can't. The conduct of who sent emails to others prior to our involvement is beyond facts. On the faces after the meeting on the 25th, it became apparent that Olgert and this restaurant were part of it. The application stands on its own merits and is in a name that it says.
Okay, yes.
I do know, for what it's worth, I do know that Olgert has a far better command in English language than Kodjan does. If Tony sent it to Olgert to make sure that Kodjan understood its contacts, then I think you'd agree that Michelle?
I haven't had too many involvements with the gem, but I know that's, so that might be the reason.
Okay. The panel does still have to determine whether the connection is satisfactorily distant before we make our determination on this. The Facebook post, it does say in there that Olga has invited people to contact him directly rather than a third party or an agent.
Right, okay, let's deal with the Facebook post. Olbert has a considerable leadership. His command of English is much better than Project. He's put a Facebook entry that has been too broad. Clodgen has replied to it, and he's asked for him to provide specifics. He said, what position are you looking for? His brother has asked on Olbert's email, what are you talking about? Because you'll be aware that within the term bar staff, you've got full-time, part-time, daytime, evening time, temporary, supervisor, manager, trainee, qualified, unqualified apprenticeships, kickstart, cocktail mixer, cellar boy, potland, it goes on. That's why Clodgen has replied on his brother's Facebook entry. It's simply too broad. Bar staff required at Norwich. I mean, to be honest with you, looking at it, in truth, he probably meant waiter, because this is a food-led premises, as encapsulated and captured in conditions we've just been discussing, I believe.
Okay. You mentioned that you have you also have such adverts on your own social media. Do you invite people to contact you directly?
No, of course not. But having said that, if they wished to speak to us directly about anything we've advertised, we'd be pleased to commend the Beefy Boys and shows. In fact, I was just showing Michelle outside the advert itself. Yeah, somebody contacted us and said, are the Beefy Boys any good? Are they a good company to work for? Of course, we say this.
Okay. I noted that Olbert invited people to contact him directly. That was my point. We're slightly flitting around. We were talking about the offered conditions. I've just got a couple of questions about that, and then I'll ask other members if they have anything else. And I think we'll probably be ready for our determination from that point. And I'll invite you to address this one more time after that. So we have the alcohol 2.1 on page 31, and that's alcohol we sell ancillary food orders, whether for consumption on or off the premises. And we've established that there'll be a minimum food order to go with alcohol deliveries. This condition also commits the operator to only serve alcohol with food orders. Is that the case? Can you confirm, please, that it will not be operated as a wet bar?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of a tricky discussion. That's what it says. 2.1 alcohol will be sold only considered to food orders.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And training, point 5, protected children from harm. That's on page 33. So there's a set of conditions there regarding training. Should the committee be minded to run the licence today? When will you be opening, please, Mr. Zafara? Okay, thank you. And is the training schedule, is that written? Is that in place yet?
I'll take that as a no, but it's okay because my company, as James said, we provide responsible alcohol retention. So that will be in place by the time we open.
Okay, so point 9.6 at the bottom of that page says the DPS or PHL. Actually, I'm not sure what PHL is. Can someone?
It's PLH, it's personal license.
Personal license.
It's premises license, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
I technically know that. Okay, and the personal license holder, DPS personal license holder should conduct 6 monthly reviews of all members of staff authorised to sell. Will you be carrying out that, or Mr. Stefano?
That would be the DPS, the designated premises supervisor, or the premises licence holder. He will be conducting his 6 monthly reviews. What that means is you go through the staff every 6 months, make sure that everybody's got a current certificate. We, as a government auditing body, issue certificates to show people the staff are trained, so that when Michelle turns up for a joint visit, first thing she says is, "Can I see a training record, please? It's this, show me that certificate." If it's not in date, then it's a clear breach. So.
Okay. 9.8. All customers, when ordering food with alcohol, will be informed of the following at the time of sale. When placing an order, customers will be informed that the business operates Challenge 25 and that it is unlawful to purchase alcohol under the age of 18. Does this apply to, the way that this is written, this applies to both inside orders and also takeaways?
You're absolutely right. What they're talking about, what they're talking about is delivery to home, and that part of that condition there takes Challenge 25 from the point of order, but to the point of delivery, to the doorstep where the food and drink is delivered. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So that's a drafting error. All customers, when ordering food for home delivery, food with alcohol for home delivery, dismissing the words for home delivery between alcohol and will. That's a good spot. Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, you noted that amendment. Thank you. Sarah, is there anything in the following paragraphs under 9.8 that now come out of the schedule for on sales that should remain in on sales? Something to consider.
I just wanted to clarify, actually, I don't think we quite made the point. Are you offering CCTV within the premises as well as at your exits and entrances?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, does the premises have CCTV currently? How many cameras do you have? 6. Okay, and what rooms do they cover? We've got a plan on. No, that's street time.
There's, you're absolutely right, you can see a big state on the plan. So prior to them opening, were you in a position to grant, sir?
Can we have a page number, please?
I haven't got it in the bond, I've got to assess it.
Okay, we'll just
36.
Whereby the cameras are shown in your.
okay, it's page 36. Reference. Okay, so there's camera locations are shown
Yeah,
there.
can you hand it to them because they're in yellow on there, if it's about 8 or 10.
Councillor, yes, has a question.
Am I correct in therefore thinking that there's no camera at the front entrance of the property?
The plan shows there's a camera within the front of the building, facing towards the door.
So camera shot, as a maybe shot on the phone. So camera, yeah. He says he's got a live feed on his phone. Would you like to see it, Councillor? Is there, she's asking specifically, is there a camera on the property of blood? Yes, ma'am.
So the camera covers the outside area of the front entrance, the immediate area outside the front. Okay. Right. That's noted. Thank you. There are, as you say, around 10 cameras here throughout the building. Okay, so are all of these cameras in place now, or are you adding some?
Clearly not, so it says there are 6 in place, there are 10 shown on that plan. That plan is to be offered, there will be 4 fitted before the open.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, you said? Councillor Maxwell, do you have any more questions? Okay, and Sarah. Okay, thank you very much. One last opportunity for Mr. Cole, please. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you for listening to our concerns. As you know, residents of Job Pits are worried about things, and basically there's been a lack of trust. So, I'd be very pleased personally if a provisional license was granted rather than full license. We want to be successful there. We'd like to have a good restaurant which we've had in the past. At the moment, we feel it's not being used last 3 years, and it's been more like a private club at the back.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments and for coming today. Michelle, do you have anything to add? Okay, thank you. Finally then, Mr. Sanford, if you'd like to just address the committee one more time, and then we'll make a determination.
What I don't want to do is bore you, because it's taking quite enough of the time.
Yeah, keep it quite brief if you can, please.
Tell you what, I won't. I've kicked this around, we've got some really good conditions sorted out with Sarah there. You've got some real clarity around time. The police have come to the conclusion that, and I quote, no further conditions need to be added and no reason why it can't be granted. We've heard the gentleman say, hence the reduction of the hours you and I have just come up with. It's essentially a new challenge. So thank you very much indeed for your time.
Okay, thank you. So I usually ask this at the end of a hearing, just to confirm that all parties are happy that they've had a fair hearing. And if not, now is the time to say, please. Okay, I'm not seeing any objections, so I assume that's correct. Okay, so now we'll ask members of the public and other officers to leave. We'll make a determination and call you back. I would suggest that we should probably allow half an hour, so not before 4:45, and we'll call you in when we're ready. Okay, thank you, and welcome back. Just to confirm, this is licensing subcommittee, Monday, 12th of July, regarding the application for grant of the premises license at Lord's Restaurant, 82 of St John's, Norwich. Okay, we've asked you back in temporarily just to discuss a couple of further points. And one of the conditions was regarding the camera positioning and the condition we'd like you to offer, or we're inviting you to offer, would be to arrange with the police and officers to have the front-facing camera sufficiently placed to cover the front of the restaurant within the required area.
Just been to the restaurant, they're in the process of relocating it, but what a good idea. Get it signed up by the police, design and crime officer.
Thank you. You happy with that, Michelle? Okay, thank you for that. And also, it was suggested and advised by the public that the license could be granted for a period of time, with permanence at this stage. Is that something that you would consider offering?
Actually, no. I'll tell you for why. It means we have to go through the entire process and all the expense and the 28 days consultation and what have you. If we make it a 6 month, but we'll be back here in 6 months. So.
Okay, but 6 months wouldn't necessarily be the period.
I couldn't be honest, it wouldn't be my choice. Would you like me just to let you in with my client?
Feel free to.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Would your legal advisor be able to join us?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. So we'll just pause for 5 minutes, please.
Can I address you, sir?
Yeah, good to go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, following a brief pause, Mr. Samper, please.
Yes, we've spoken outside and we benefited from a brief discussion with your legal advisor. What we'd like to offer is a license of 13 months duration. The reason why we say 13 months is that we've got 12 months of operating history. And then, in order to stay open in that 13th month, we will need to reapply again and start our 28-day consultation period. Okay. And we're rather hoping that after a year's trading, there will be no issues with any neighbours and nobody will object. But of course, gentlemen will incur the fees for having to reapply. So if you can go with the 13 months, we'd be obliged.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, I need my mic on. Thank you for that. Sarah, would you like to add anything?
No, Mr. Semper's covered everything that we talked about.
Okay, thank you. So technically we have to adjourn briefly once again. So we ask you members of the public to leave the room and we'll call you back in no more than 5 minutes. thank you for waiting and coming back. Just for the benefit of the YouTube feed, this is the licensing subcommittee, Norwich City Council, Monday, 12th of July. Regarding the application for grant of premises license, Lord's Restaurant, 82 Upper St Giles Street, Norwich. Okay, so the committee has listened to all representations and heard details of the management structure as proposed. We decided there were insufficient grounds have been shown the granting of the licence would fail to promote those licensing objectives. We note that Public Protection have withdrawn their objection, that the police, as Michelle Bartram from the police licensing team, have effectively withdrawn their objections, having previously made a representation. Conditions offered have fully addressed residents' concern regarding noise nuisance. And the determination of the committee today is a unanimous one, and that is to grant the licence for with the conditions as offered and amended through this hearing, and also for a period of 13 months as discussed in the previous section of this meeting. With that, that concludes the hearing today. Would you like to add anything or ask any questions?
I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed. You've been very fair and thorough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The legal element will be sent to you with details of the appeal process should you wish to access that. Okay, thanks to everyone for coming, especially Mr. Powell for coming as a member of the public. And thank you. That's the end of the meeting.